Hello, I'm Nuala McGovern and this is Outside Source. The European Union is to hold an emergency summit on Thursday to tackle the migrant crisis. And that's as this migrant boat capsizes off Greece. Two more vessels have issued distress calls off Libya. That's in the same waters where it's feared hundreds drowned on Sunday. Conflicts in the Middle East and Africa are fueling this migration. We're going to bring you an exclusive report from inside the Yemeni city of Aden to meet people who are struggling to cope after weeks of Saudi airstrikes.
We lost everything. No food, no water, no electric, no situation, no life.
And Zulu King, Goodwill Zeluthini, well, he was accused of inciting hatred within South Africa for foreigners. But today, instead, he tells a hostile crowd in Durban that attacks on immigrants must end. But will they heed his call?
Mozambique, go! Somalia, go!
Plus the story of the former British Army captain who's taken on one of the world's toughest races to help injured servicemen. You're very welcome to the programme. Well, after a weekend of tragedy in the Mediterranean, this is the story. Today has brought more loss of life for migrants. Let's take a look at the map, of course, where these areas have been affected. 93 people have been rescued off a migrant boat that ran aground off the coast of the Greek island of Rhodes. 3 people, however, including a child, died. And if we move on a little bit, Italian and Maltese ships, they're responding to 2 migrant emergencies right now near the Libyan coast. So right at this moment, the distress calls apparently were made from an inflatable raft with 100 to 150 on board one boat and another boat with 300 people. So we'll bring you more details on that as we get them. But BBC's Europe editor, Katja Adler, she has been at a meeting that has been taking place trying to find political solutions to this particular problem.
Well, yes, indeed. This was a meeting of Europe's foreign and interior ministers. It was convened especially today as part of a scheduled meeting to have a look at the growing migrant crisis. I've just come out of a press conference held by the EU's foreign policy chief, and it saw Federica Mogherini very emotional indeed. She said she was speaking not just in her official role, but as a mother and as a human being. And she said there was actually no justification for the fact that it's taking the EU this long to act decisively on the migrant crisis, including the deaths today, as you mentioned. But she said that today was a turning point, that amongst those foreign ministers and interior ministers, there was a renewed feeling that everybody was going to work together, and for the first time a recognition that this is a European problem, not just a problem for individual member states like Greece, like Italy, that are hit here. She said there was broad political consensus for a 10-point plan. Now, this would include boosting the current maritime and border controls in the Mediterranean Sea. It would also include targeting people traffickers, those people who put people on the boats in the first place and who profit from their misery, including, if they can get a mandate, to capture and destroy the vessels that they use. There's also the idea of redistributing more equally amongst European Union nations the number of asylum seekers and refugees, and more points as well, of course. There will be a special emergency meeting of EU leaders on Thursday this week in Brussels, and that's where more of the details will be hammered out. Key for member states will be funding, of course, and also immigration is a political hot potato in many countries, often exploited by populist parties.
Katja Adler speaking to us there from Luxembourg. Thank you very much for that update. And of course, we'll keep abreast of those developments as they happen throughout Outside Source. Well, let's get a little bit more on this story. I want to bring you this tweet from BBC News Graphics. Let me go back up. There we go. It says more migrants are feared drowned in the Mediterranean. Now, that is coming from the UN that says the crossing from North Africa is the deadliest. And I want to bring up this graph. It's so interesting if you take a look at it, right? You see all the routes routes that there possibly are of how migrants might make it to Europe. Let's go back here, over 900. We keep coming back to that figure because there could have been that many people on board a boat that sank Saturday night into Sunday morning. They still don't know how many people died. We're hearing perhaps only 24 survived. Let's hear more from the BBC's James Reynolds, who's been following this story.
At night in Sicily, the smallest survivors came off first. Here, a mother lets a rescuer take her child. Nearly 100 migrants from Syria were picked up from the sea. It's one of many rescues Italy's had to carry out in recent days. In the Mediterranean, Italy has continued its search at the site of yesterday's shipwreck. But what hope can there be of finding any more survivors? This morning in Malta, rescuers removed the 24 bodies they recovered. On deck, the wreck's few survivors had to sit and watch. The rescued migrants who get here will find themselves in a new country and a strange world. The family members they set off with may be dead. How do you start a new life when everyone you lived for may be lost at sea? These migrants made it with nothing to spare. These pictures show a rescue earlier today off the Greek island of Rhodes. 3 people died on this journey. Migration monitors here in Sicily offer a warning.
Libya for the moment is the problem. Smugglers are working without any problem. Migrants are target of violence and abuses, so they do not have any other chance than to take a boat and risk their lives at sea.
This is what happens when that risk fails. In Malta, the bodies of the dead are driven away. These migrants will be buried in the European soil they'd hoped to touch.
So there you have it, James Reynolds bringing that report, bringing it all into context. Now, there's been a lot of talk surrounding 2 search and rescue operations. I want to bring you, this is the map basically of the areas that we're talking about, okay? One is Mare Nostrum. You might have heard that. It was run by the Italians. Per month, it had $9.7 million. It was to keep a 24-hour watch across the Mediterranean. However, this is the controversial bit. It was replaced by Triton. Quite a difference. $3.1 million per month instead. So what are you going to do with that? How can it actually police the seas? That was the question that many people asked. And it was a cheaper, basically a more limited operation that really would only go 30 nautical miles off the Italian coast. So it's come under intense criticism, as we've talked about. Let's hear a little about what people have been saying. This is Zaid Rad Al Hussein. He's the new UN Human Rights Chief. He says that the EU should take a more sophisticated, more courageous and less callous approach to migrants that are trying to reach the EU. So coming out very strongly there. And also, let's go on to hear a little bit more. He says Europe is turning its back on some of the most vulnerable migrants in the world and risks turning the Mediterranean into a vast cemetery. That strikes me because that's exactly the words that the Maltese foreign minister used last year. Let's see some of the tweets that are coming in at the moment as well. And then into our tweets. So if we take a look at some of these, for example, they talk about BBC World has been tweeting that people smugglers cash in on Mediterranean migrants' misery. Let's take a little closer look at this. About 1 million for each migrant boat. Just think of the amount of boats that you have heard about over the past year. The EU spends about 3 million per month on sea patrols. That is coming back again to that Operation Triton. So to give you a sense of the danger of these boats, I want you to take a look at this footage. There we go. Okay, so this has been taken on board a people smuggler's boat, you can probably guess. BBC Arabic obtained these photos from a mobile phone from an Eritrean man. He was travelling with his wife and his young child. You can see the boat is very crowded, it's moving at high speed, it doesn't have space for people to shelter from any elements, for example, below deck. The boat was intercepted and it seems that all of those that are on board were rescued. So what does it take, you might be thinking, to leave your home and travel thousands of kilometres in search of refuge? Let's take a listen now to a man who's from Syria. He's living in England and he did make that long trip.
Before, Syria was very good, but after you know, the war, everything changed, everything is bad. I think I do have choose. I want to go in Europe at the night. About 415 person in this sport. The sport long 12 meters only. And when I see this, I want to die now. I don't want. I say for him, please release me. I don't want. You take my money. I don't want. But it's very dangerous. He look at me very nervous, and he tell me, I kill you now, and I put you under the ground if you don't want to go. The man, the children. I remember when he cried too much. The same water, his face, because he cried about his family. Why I bring my family?
So there you have it, one of the other voices, many voices of migrants that we've been hearing over the past couple of days. Well, many migrants that are escaping instability in the Middle East instead, that includes Yemen. We've talked about these Saudi airstrikes that are now into their 4th week. And with the map that we just want to move down, so this is the region that we're going to be talking about now. I want to bring you a tweet that is coming in now, and that is from Reuters World. Take a look at this. Airstrike on missile base in Yemen capital causes huge explosion. As you can see with the picture, when you compare it with the size of the buildings, you can see exactly what it seems to be. So those reports coming in just over the past couple of hours. And also, let me bring you a little bit more footage from Yemen. And this is instead footage claiming to show the moment of the strike. It's been widely circulated on social media, but we haven't been able to independently verify it. Reuters says at least 7 people have been killed. One more quote that I want to read. This is from the charity Oxfam. They have been talking, I'll just maximise the picture that they have been tweeting over the past couple of hours. They talk about those strikes that have been taking place. They say it actually hit one of their warehouses that was containing humanitarian aid. So obviously humanitarian crisis there. So very bad news for them. And let me go to my colleague Orla Guerin. She is making the trip. She's been tweeting really about the challenges, about making the journey from Djibouti to the Yemeni port of Aden. It's such an unstable area. They were actually fired across the bow on this, but it was the Yemeni Navy. Didn't realise they were BBC journalists. Orla has filed a report for us, an exclusive report, and we can take a look at it now. And there we go.
We took to the open seas to reach Yemen. This was our only way in. After a voyage of 21 hours, we approached the southern port of Aden. The now absent president, Abdrabbuh Hadi, stares down over the harbour. What happens here could decide the future of Yemen.
Well, we're now finally coming ashore. We've been told there were airstrikes just a few hours before we arrived. We've also been warned not to stay any longer than is necessary because there's always a risk of kidnap by Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula.
Around the port, scars of the recent conflict, and locals like Raja, desperate for help.
Everything, we lost everything. No food, no water, no electric, no situation, no life. You know, no life here.
The streets look like a battlefield. Few here venture out if they can avoid it. Apart from local fighters loyal to the president, many still in their teens. They say they'll stop the Houthi rebel advance. This group was manning the door at a local hospital. Inside, some new arrivals. On average, there are 30 a day. many shot by snipers, both civilians and fighters, some keeping their guns by the bed. In intensive care, Ahmed Mohammed, a sleepy 5-year-old. Doctors say he was hit by shrapnel inside his home, but they expect him to recover.
This is in the morning, gunshot in the left, in the right shoulder going. This is in the morning only.
Orthopedic surgeon Mohammed Mohsen tells me the hospital can't cope with the flow of wounded.
Now we have only very little and not everything we have. Sometimes we in the difficult position.
Are the patients dying because you don't have the supplies?
Yes, of course.
Well, they just don't have enough beds here for all the wounded who are being brought in. Doctors say they need antibiotics, they need bandages. The power is coming and going. It's off at the moment. They're using a generator, but that will run out of fuel in 6 hours' time, and there's no more available to buy.
Back at the port, families keep a vigil, hoping against hope to find a way out. Among them, we found Abdul from Birmingham, stranded by Yemen's civil war.
All you do is hear like the house shakes, a couple of houses, gone down, and you see them, and say, oh my God, I shouldn't be down there. Maybe I should move a different kind of area. And because you got family as well, you're just trying to run from one place to another.
But where to run in a city under fire? Our parting image was ominous, the nightly warfare beginning again. Orla Gearan, BBC News, Aden.
Such an interesting report. We'll make sure you watch on Tuesday. We're going to have Orla Gearan's second report from the port of Aden. And also later we're going to have Chinese car makers lead the way at the Shanghai Auto Show. But where are the models to show off the latest models?
Planet Earth. Yep, life here is getting better. Medicines and education are reaching ever greater numbers of people. Businesses are crossing more borders, bringing prosperity and optimism into people's lives. This is the power of global trade. Of course, there's still a long way to go, but the more the world keeps on trading, the better it's going to get for everyone, everywhere. That's why we'll deliver today, tomorrow, and the day after.
Indonesia seems to have it all: a large consumer market, natural resources, and a young labour force. But what are some of the challenges it faces under its new government? Join me, Sharanjit Lail, on BBC World News as Jakarta plays host to the World Economic Forum.
Hello, I'm Nuala McGovern. This is Outside Source live from the BBC newsroom. Our top story: the European Union is to hold an emergency summit on Thursday to tackle the crisis in the Mediterranean. There's been new distress calls received from migrant boats. Hundreds are feared drowned in a capsized boat on Sunday. And also the main stories coming from BBC Languages. The Swahili service reports that at least 7 people have been killed in an attack on a United Nations vehicle in the semi-autonomous region of Puntland. The UN said 4 of its staff died in the blast in the northeastern town of Garo. And one of the most clicked stories online, that is that a Spanish student has killed a teacher at a high school in Barcelona. At least 4 other people were injured in the attack. Police have arrested a 13-year-old suspect. Mbizo, that is a hashtag that has been trending in South Africa today. Take a look at this tweet. It's from NCA News, which are a good source to follow if you're following the unrest in South Africa. Well, foreigners jeered at an anti-xenophobia Mbizo. So what's an Mbizo? It's a traditional Zulu political gathering. This one was called by their king, Goodwill Zwelithini. You might remember his name. He had been accused of fueling recent attacks on foreigners. I also want to bring another tweet that we've been looking at. This is from my colleague, Carney Sharp. She is tweeting from Durban, also tweeted this picture from inside the stadium. As you can see, some of the supporters of the Zulu King just before he arrived. And we can indeed go as well to inside the studio. Let's hear what the King had to say today.
I am calling for a war today, but it's a war to protect everyone of foreign origin in this country, irrespective of which country they are originally from. If these media reports about me calling for a real war last week were true, then this country would be in ashes by now.
So why don't we take a look at some of the other tweets that have been coming in, particularly with this. Perhaps you also follow News 24. They have been tweeting as well. Actually, Jeff Wicks, let's take a look at his. He's been saying there is no spirit of brotherhood here. All the songs are loaded and aggressive with anti-foreigner rhetoric. So that was representative of quite a bit that was on social media today. We can also take a look at what my colleague Karen Allen has been reporting from inside the stadium. Take a look at this.
This may look like a traditional celebration, but the people have been gathered here to address a very pressing national problem. In the wake of xenophobic attacks, the King has been addressing crowds here to try to urge restraint. His comments a little earlier last month were blamed for unleashing a wave of xenophobic attacks, foreigners being targeted. He's tried to defend his position. He's blamed the media for misconstruing his words. But when you speak to many people who've been listening to his speech, they say there is one single problem in South Africa, a chronic shortage of jobs, and they continue to blame the foreigners for taking those away from them.
They must go, but peacefully. They mustn't chase them. They mustn't hit them, but they must go. Yeah. If they don't let them to go, they're gonna continue to kill them. That is not good.
So there you have it, some of the voices coming out of Durban just a couple of hours ago. Well, now it's time to move on to cars. This let's take a look at a couple of different car shows that are taking place. Right, take a look at this. Can you pick it out? This is the Bangkok Motor Show that was just a few weeks ago. This instead was the Seoul Motor Show, also a couple of weeks earlier. But here's one from, actually let's go on one more. Actually, these are all from the various Bangkok and Seoul motor shows. This one instead is from the Shanghai Motor Show. Can you spot the difference? Yes, those scantily clad models are nowhere to be seen. Well, organisers say they want to bring attention back to the curves of the vehicles. So there has been today a big sporting story which is happening is about marathons, in fact, and of course it's the 2-year anniversary of the Boston Marathon. And it's the 2-year anniversary of the Boston Marathon, so of course a lot of people are marking it today. And it also has been another marathon that we're going to bring you a few details on. So let me return first to the Boston Marathon. And we're able to go to WM Majors. Let's go to this tweet. Carolyn Rotish, Boston Marathon women's winner. And there we go, at Boston Marathon. So she's obviously very happy there indeed. We can take one more tweet as well, this time from the Boston Globe. Of course, they have an interest in this particular marathon. This is Lisa Desisa of Ethiopia. He has won the men's. And of course, as I mentioned, many people instead also remembering the race 2 years ago when an attack took place. Now, let's take a look right now at this report that's coming in. But this is to do with a different marathon. This is to do, the MDS as it's called, the Marathon des Sables, which injured servicemen take part in. It's described by some as the toughest in the world.
It's only a case of putting your left foot in front of your right foot. The speed and cadence at which you put your left foot of your right foot is controllable. If you're starting to hurt, slow down. If you're feeling strong, go quicker. Yeah, I was injured by a roadside bomb. I was in a vehicle at the time, and Yeah, it was a 3-vehicle convoy just going from one place to another in Basra. Unfortunately, the soldier that was driving the vehicle, he was sadly killed, Private Luke Simpson. I lost my right hand just above the wrist. I had some damage to the right thigh and both calves and left wrist as well. The drama is when you've only got one hand, buckles become painful. We're no different to anyone else really, just because of the nature of the fact that we were in military service. We may be given a special sort of credence by others, but amongst ourselves we are what we are. We're just here to get from A to B in the quickest time possible. It just happens to be that A to B is about 150 miles across these conditions.
Well, congratulations to all who completed the marathon, whether it is the Boston Marathon or the Marathon des Sables. Well done all. Thanks for spending some time with us here on Outside Source. Until next time, goodbye.
Hello again. We have an east-west split with the weather across Europe at the moment. A big area of high pressure covers much of Western Europe, where the weather is largely fine, dry and settled with some warm sunshine. A cool northwesterly wind and a weather system working into Eastern Europe will continue to bring cloudy and damp weather here, with some further patches of rain forecast on Tuesday. None of the rain, though, particularly heavy, it has to be said, but temperatures will be a little suppressed.